Why was everyone staring at her like she didn't belong? The C-130's cargo bay groaned as it clawed through turbulence over the Hindu Kush, metal vibrating like a living thing. Inside, rows of men sat strapped to canvas seats, America's finest, the kind of soldiers who laughed at danger, except none of them were laughing now. They watched her. Lucy King, 28 years old, compact frame, dark hair pulled into a bun so tight it gave her a look of severity. Same fatigues, same body armor, same standard-issue gear. But there was something in her stillness that unsettled them. Her eyes, gray, sharp, unblinking, swept the cargo hold like a radar searching for threats. Across from her, Chief Petty Officer Marcus Reeves caught her gaze, then looked away first. That had been happening a lot. The SEALs didn't know what to make of the woman who had quietly attached herself to their mission under Joint Special Operations Command. Her file said intelligence analyst. Her posture said something else entirely. 30 minutes to drop, the loadmaster yelled over the engines. The SEALs stirred, checking weapons, adjusting straps, tightening helmets, all muscle memory, all ritual. Lucy moved too, but differently. Her hands were steady, deliberate. Sidearm, magazines, medical kit, radio. She touched each item as though reaffirming a silent promise to herself. Then came the voice she'd been expecting. Lieutenant Commander Jack Hawthorne made his way down the bay, holding onto the overhead straps as the aircraft bucked. Tall, square-jawed, carrying the kind of confidence that comes from never truly failing. His tone was clipped, already dismissive before he even spoke. "King," he said loudly, pitching his voice above the roar. "Let be clear. You're here to observe, that's it. You stay with command. You do not engage unless we're overrun and you have no other choice. Understood?" Lucy's answer was calm, almost gentle. "Crystal, sir." He waited, expecting her to flinch, argue, or justify herself. She didn't. She just held his gaze until he grunted and moved on. Behind her, one of the younger SEALs, Danny Torres, leaned toward his buddy and muttered, "$20 says she freezes the second bullets start flying." "No bet," came the reply. "They always do." Lucy didn't react, but she heard it, every syllable, every tone of mockery. People revealed their truths in throwaway sentences. And right now, these men were telling her exactly who they thought she was. The aircraft hit another pocket of turbulence. Dust motes floated in the vibrating light. Lucy closed her eyes, breathing slow and steady, not to pray, not to find calm, but to accept. To accept what was coming, whatever shape it took. When the ramp dropped, Afghanistan's dawn air rushed in, cold, dry, tasting of diesel and dust. The team disembarked with perfect precision, boots striking earth in a choreography born of repetition. Lucy followed, silent, small against the backdrop of the Hindu Kush mountains, but her eyes never stopped moving. Every shadow, every silhouette catalogued and measured. The compound lay in a valley like a scar in the earth. Mud brick walls, terraces carved into the hillsides. The first light of morning painted the landscape in violet and ash. Intelligence briefings had said 6 to 8 fighters inside, lightly armed, low sophistication. She knew better. Intelligence briefings were almost always optimistic. The SEALs fanned out, efficient, lethal, professional. They were the best in the world, and yet, as Lucy watched them move, something began to tighten at the base of her skull. That whisper of intuition that had saved her life too many times to dismiss. It was too quiet. No dogs barking, no roosters, no chatter of life in the early dawn, just silence pressing down on the valley like a weight. "Sir," Lucy said quietly into her radio, "something off." Hawthorne's voice came back, edged with impatience. "They're asleep, King. That's the point of a pre-dawn raid." "No dogs," she repeated, "in rural Afghanistan." "Maybe they ate them," he shot back. "Focus on your job." And then the world exploded. The blast came from behind the compound, not inside. A buried IED timed to detonate just after the assault team passed, but before the support element cleared the path. The explosion ripped through the valley, punching the air from her lungs. Men went down screaming. The radio came alive with chaos, voices overlapping, calls for corpsmen, for reports, for someone to take control. Then the gunfire began. It didn't come from the compound. It came from the ridgelines above, coordinated, deliberate, merciless. Tracer rounds stitched across the valley floor like streaks of red lightning. It was a perfect ambush. Lucy flattened behind a low wall, mind racing. She could see it already, the geometry of the trap, the prepared positions, the fields of fire designed to herd the seals into open ground. Someone had studied American raid patterns. Someone had built this kill zone just for them. The radio operator shouted over the storm of bullets. Outpost Delta is under attack. Heavy contact. They can't support. Of course not. This wasn't bad luck. It was synchronized, multiple ambushes striking at once. Hawthorne was barking orders, trying to regroup, his voice tight with disbelief. Find cover. Return fire. We hold until air support's here. Lucy looked around. There was no cover, just dirt, stone, and open ground. Every movement drew more fire. Every second meant another man down. Her fingers brushed her sidearm, then paused. Not yet, not that weapon. Another explosion rocked the hillside, closer this time. Reeves dragged a wounded seal behind what little protection a broken wall offered. Blood streamed down his face. Torres was firing blind into the hills, swearing under his breath. "This is suicide," someone shouted. Lucy's heart rate didn't spike. It slowed. The world narrowed to patterns, muzzle flashes, firing arcs, coordination points. Her mind began mapping it, seeing the invisible network behind the chaos. She keyed her mic, voice eerily calm. "Heathen 6, this is Cipher 7. Multiple dug-in enemy positions. Estimated 30 to 40 combatants. We are pinned. Request immediate air support." Static, then the reply. "Cipher 7, air assets are 20 minutes out. Can you hold?" Lucy's gaze swept the chaos. The wounded, the dead, the dwindling ammunition. Negative, she thought, but she didn't say it. Instead, she reached to the small of her back, beneath her vest, beneath the layer of regulation gear, and drew out a weapon no one expected her to have. A compact rifle, matte black, modified to near perfection. A suppressor gleamed faintly in the morning light. She unfolded the bipod, dropped prone behind a shallow berm, and settled her cheek against the stock. "King," Hawthorne shouted, "get down, that's an order." She didn't answer. The scope came to life, crystal clear. Through the glass, the battlefield changed. The chaos became patterns. The flashes became coordinates. She exhaled once slow, then squeezed. The suppressed crack barely carried over the gunfire. But on the hillside, one of the PKM gunners suddenly dropped, lifeless. His weapon went silent mid-burst. Before anyone could react, she shifted, fired again, another burst of dust, another figure crumpling behind cover. The SEALs hesitated, confused. Then Reeves, still blading, whispered, "Holy hell, who is she?" Lucy didn't hear him. She was gone now, mind detached, body automatic. The world existed only through the reticle. Movement, distance, wind, correction, breathe, squeeze, transition. 3 more targets fell in rapid succession. Command position, radio operator, RPG team. She was dismantling the ambush piece by piece. 1,700 meters, she murmured to herself, adjusting her scope. Elevation 240, wind 2 left. The trigger broke again. The enemy commander, or what looked like one, pitched forward between terraces, falling like a puppet with its strings cut. Up on the ridge, panic rippled through the fighters. Without coordination, their disciplined volleys fractured into chaos. Some began to retreat. Others fired wildly. The trap they'd built for the Americans was collapsing around them. "Jesus Christ," Torres whispered, She's breaking them by herself. Reeves nodded, still watching through his scope. She's not just shooting, she's hunting. And then, as quickly as it had begun, the firing faded. One by one, the guns fell silent. The valley exhaled. Smoke drifted upward. The sun had risen high enough now to paint everything in unforgiving light: blood, brass, dust, and disbelief. Lucy rose slowly, eyes scanning the ridgeline for movement. Nothing. Only silence and the faint metallic clink of cooling barrels. Hawthorne approached, his voice lower now. Not the commander barking orders, but a man trying to understand something he'd just seen that defied all his assumptions. "King," he said, "what the hell was that?" She turned, calm as ever. "That was me keeping your men alive, sir." He blinked. "Intelligence analysts don't shoot like that." "No, sir." She ejected the magazine, checked the chamber, reloaded. "I'm not really an intelligence analyst." He stared at her, the truth beginning to dawn, heavy and unwelcome. "Then what are you?" "The person they send when intelligence isn't enough." Her tone didn't change. Her hands didn't shake. It was just a fact spoken into the dust and smoke. Reeves was still staring, whispering under his breath. 17 kills in minutes. Lucy said nothing. She didn't count. She never counted. The helicopter rotors thundered in the distance, medevac inbound. The men moved to tend the wounded, to salvage what they could of the wrecked operation. Lucy helped, kneeling beside the corpsman, applying pressure, stabilizing vitals. Her hands were steady, her breathing calm. She looked like any other soldier doing her job. But the men around her knew better now. They'd seen what no file, no rumor, no briefing could have prepared them for: a quiet woman who had walked into their world of bravado and brotherhood and rewritten the rules of survival. And as the helicopters descended in clouds of dust, the SEAL commander found himself staring at her again, not with doubt this time, but with the uneasy respect of a man who just realized the most dangerous person on his battlefield had been sitting across from him all along. "No woman shoots like that," he had said. He was right. No woman did. Because Lucy King wasn't just any woman. And what came next would make even America's deadliest warriors question everything they thought they knew about war. The Chinook came in low, its rotors beating the air into submission. The downdraft turned dust into a storm that swallowed everything: bodies, noise, smoke, grief. Lucy King stood at the edge of the landing zone, rifle slung across her chest, eyes scanning the ridgeline one last time. She didn't look tired. She didn't even look alive in the normal way, more like a shadow made of focus and control. The wounded went first, men screaming through clenched teeth as they were lifted onto stretchers, wrapped in gauze and adrenaline. Reeves helped the corpsman, face streaked with blood that wasn't all his. Hawthorne kept shouting names into the chaos, ticking off survivors like a man counting ghosts. Lucy didn't move until the last of them were aboard. Then she climbed the ramp, boots thudding against the metal deck, dust still rising off her armor. Hawthorne grabbed her arm, not harshly but enough to stop her. "We need to talk when we land," he said. His tone wasn't angry now. It was something else: disbelief, maybe even fear. "I'll provide a report," she replied, neutral, unreadable. "I don't want a report," he said. "I want the truth." "You'll get what you need, Commander." She slipped free and took a seat near the rear hatch, facing the open ramp where the mountains shrank into haze behind them. The Chinook lifted, banking hard over the valley. Through the dust cloud, Lucy could see the smoke still rising, the wreckage, the silence. She had left 17 bodies in that valley and maybe more. She didn't look away. She made herself look. Reeves sat across from her. He hadn't taken his eyes off her since the firefight ended. Every time he tried to look at her weapon, his gaze returned to her face instead, as if trying to reconcile the calm woman before him with the impossible marksmanship he'd witnessed. When the engine steadied into cruise, he spoke. "My daughter wants to join the Marines," he said quietly, almost to himself. Been trying to talk her out of it, told her it's no place for women, that she'll never get the respect she deserves, that men won't ever see her as equal. Lucy didn't lift her head. She kept cleaning her weapon, cloth, bolt, chamber, all done with surgical precision. You should stop lying to her, she said finally. Reeves frowned, lying. You tell her she can't because it's hard, Lucy said softly, when what you should be doing is preparing her for the fact that she absolutely can. You think you're protecting her, but you're just teaching her fear. He stared at her, the engine noise filling the silence between them. You've been doing this a long time. Long enough. How many? She paused, stilling her hands for the first time. Enough that I stopped counting, she said. Not so many that I stopped remembering. He looked down, ashamed of his own words. You remember them. Every face, every trigger pull, every decision. She looked up then, meeting his eyes. That's the price. You carry them with you, all of them. The helicopter rocked through a pocket of wind. Reeves swallowed hard, suddenly aware of how quiet she'd become. You're so young, he said softly. Old enough. They didn't speak again for the rest of the flight. When the Chinook finally touched down at the forward operating base, the sound was chaos, medics rushing in, stretchers waiting, officers barking orders. The air reeked of jet fuel, sweat, and the metallic tang of blood. Lucy stepped off last, scanning the perimeter automatically, always scanning, always ready for the next shot that might never come. Hawthorne was already arguing with the base commander, demanding air support reports and intelligence updates. Reeves was with the wounded, his hands moving with quiet care. Torres sat off to the side, head in his hands, shaking silently. Lucy moved past them all, heading toward the intelligence tent with her weapon case slung over her shoulder. She looked like she was just doing her job, a professional among chaos, but her mind was elsewhere. Something was wrong with the bigger picture. The ambush had been too perfect, the timing too exact. Someone had known the SEALs' route, their comms, their time of insertion. Someone had handed the enemy a map to their deaths. And that meant someone on their own side had sold them out. She was halfway to the tent when a voice cut through the noise. Captain King. Not Lucy, not King, Captain. The word hit her like an echo from another life. She turned. A man in civilian clothes stood beside a black SUV that didn't belong anywhere near a forward operating base. He looked out of place in the dust-pressed shirt, no visible rank but authority in every movement. Mid-50s, fit, eyes sharp as broken glass. Mr. Harrison, Lucy said, keeping her voice neutral. Walk with me. He didn't wait for her answer. They moved past the medical tents toward a row of stacked shipping containers, the kind of makeshift privacy only war zones could create. When they were out of sight, Harrison turned to her. I had 16 separate intelligence feeds, he began coldly, telling me this was a clean op, minimal hostiles, textbook raid, and instead I've got a valley full of dead bodies and a SEAL team that almost got wiped out. The intelligence was compromised, Lucy said. No kidding, Harrison snapped. The question is how and by whom, but that's not why I'm here. He glanced at the weapon case slung over her shoulder. You violated your cover. I kept them alive. You broke protocol. I saved Americans. You exposed yourself, he said sharply, stepping closer. Your job was to observe, gather intel, and provide comm support, not single-handedly engage 40 combatants and put 17 confirmed kills under your name. Lucy met his gaze, unmoved. Would you prefer those 17 had been ours instead? I'd prefer you followed orders, he shot back. There it was, the wall. The invisible line between the people who fought and the people who ordered them to fight. My job, Lucy said, is to keep Americans alive. No, Harrison said, voice hard as iron. Your job is whatever I tell you it is. You're not a SEAL, you're not JSOC, you're not even officially military anymore. You're an asset, a tool, and tools that act on their own get locked away. Are you threatening me? I'm reminding you of consequences. The air between them turned razor thin. He took half a step back, maybe realizing who he was standing in front of, a woman who'd killed 17 men before breakfast and hadn't broken a sweat. Lucy didn't move, didn't blink. "So what happens now?" she asked quietly. "Now you write your report," he said. "You explain that airstrikes had already softened the enemy before you arrived. You explain that you provided real-time intelligence, that your information allowed the SEALs to engage effectively. You explain everything, except the part where you personally killed half the enemy force. You want me to lie. I want you to protect operational security." Lucy studied him for a long time. She knew this conversation would come, it always did. Every time she stepped out of the shadows to save lives, someone came to shove her back in. "And if I refuse?" "Then you'll find yourself behind a desk in Virginia," Harrison said, "analyzing satellite photos for the rest of your career. You'll disappear, quietly." He let the words hang there, knowing exactly what they meant. Lucy King was many things, but she wasn't someone who could sit safely while others bled. That was her weakness, and Harrison had just pressed on it. "I'll write the report," she said finally. "Good." He started to turn away, then added, "And next time remember you're there to observe, not to be a hero." He walked off, leaving her alone in the sharp Afghan sunlight. She stood there for a long moment, the hum of the base in the distance, engines, helicopters, shouted orders, all fading into background noise. She looked down at her hands. They didn't shake. They never did. But inside, where nobody could see, something was shifting a small fracture deep in her conviction. Because for the first time in years, she was starting to wonder whether saving lives and following orders could still mean the same thing. Later that night, under a moon that painted the desert in silver and silence, Lucy sat alone by the edge of the base, rifle across her knees. The wind moved through the wire fences with a hollow song. She thought about the SEALs, the ones who lived, the ones who didn't. She thought about the valley, about the sound of her own breath between each shot. And she thought about the words that man had said, "You're an asset, a tool." She'd been called worse, but never by someone who looked her in the eye and believed it. Somewhere beyond the fence, a distant explosion echoed, another fight, another unit, another night. She didn't flinch. She just kept staring into the dark. Because deep down, Lucy King was already making a decision. Not about revenge, not about rebellion. About something much harder. Who she was. And who she was going to be after all of this. The kind of person who followed orders. Or the kind of person who did what was right, even if no one ever knew her name. 3 days later, the desert heat had turned the base into a furnace. The wind carried the smell of jet fuel, cordite, and burned metal, the scent of unfinished stories. Lucy King sat alone in a windowless room, concrete walls painted the color of exhaustion. The overhead light hummed. On the metal table before her sat a file, a pen, and a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. She'd already written the report Harrison wanted, the polished lie dressed up as official truth. Enemy positions degraded by preparatory airstrikes. Captain King provided intelligence coordination and ground support. Engagement successful. It was perfect, sanitized, safe. And false. The door opened. Commander Hawthorne stepped in first, sleeves rolled, expression unreadable. Chief Reeves followed, face tight with something between respect and unease. 2 other men entered behind them, strangers in uniform without name tapes, JSOC brass. The kind of people whose ranks didn't matter because their clearance did. The door shut with a metallic click that sounded too final. Hawthorne started without ceremony. The official report says the enemy was already neutralized before we got there, that Captain King's intelligence allowed us to finish the job. He paused. The air between them was heavy, but we all know that's bullshit. Lucy didn't move, didn't blink. So, he continued, voice steady but colder now, I'm going to ask once off the record. Who do you really work for? She looked at him for a long moment. She spent 72 hours deciding how to answer that question. She could play the part, the analyst, the asset, the obedient shadow. But then she saw Reeves beside him. His arm was bandaged. His eyes carried the hollow quiet of men who'd seen too much and lived anyway. They deserved more than a lie. I work, she said slowly, for an organization that doesn't officially exist. One of the JSOC officers shifted, but she kept going. Her tone was calm, almost detached. We identify situations where conventional military responses are impossible, where politics, bureaucracy, or geography make action inconvenient. We insert assets, people like me, to resolve those situations quietly, permanently. The first officer leaned forward. You mean assassins? Lucy didn't flinch. Problem solvers. The difference being, we only touch targets verified as direct threats to American lives or interests. But sometimes those targets are in places we're not supposed to be, protected by laws, immunity, diplomacy. Sometimes they hide behind the illusion of peace. That's when they call us. Reeves exhaled slowly, his jaw tight. So you're what, a ghost? I'm someone trained to fix what normal units can't. By killing, the officer said flatly. By ending, Lucy corrected. It's not about pulling a trigger. It's about closing loops before they open into wars. Hawthorne studied her. The anger that had once filled his voice was gone, replaced by something quieter, a reluctant awe. The ambush, he said. It was perfect, too perfect. The Taliban knew our route, our time of entry, even our fallback points. Someone tipped them off. Lucy nodded once. Someone inside Afghan security forces, maybe higher. It wasn't a coincidence. We were meant to die there. He stared at her. Then why blow your cover? You could have let it play out, stayed invisible. Why risk everything? She was silent for a long moment. Then, because that's what we do, we keep Americans alive, even when they don't know we exist, even when they'd hate us if they did. The room fell still. The hum of the light was the only sound. Finally, the second JSOC officer spoke. This conversation never happened. This briefing doesn't exist. Captain King's report stands as written. That's the end of it. Everyone nodded, everyone except Hawthorne. He waited until the others filed out, until the door closed, leaving just the two of them. For a moment, neither spoke. Then he said quietly, for what it's worth, I was wrong about you. Lucy gave the faintest smile. Most people are. Is it lonely, he asked, being the person nobody's supposed to know about? She thought about it. Sometimes. But then I think about the men who went home to their families because I was there. I think about the attacks that never happen because people like me stop them before they start. And I remember why I do this. He nodded slowly, understanding more than he wanted to. Will I see you again? Probably not. Because people like you disappear. Because people like me have to. She gathered her few belongings, notebook, pen, rifle case, and turned for the door. Hawthorne called after her, King. She stopped. Thank you, he said quietly, for my men. She looked back, gray eyes calm, steady. You're welcome, Commander. Do me a favor. What's that? Stop underestimating people because of what they look like or what their file says. The most dangerous ones are always the ones you never see coming. Then she was gone. Outside, the afternoon sun hit her like a wall. Helicopters lifted off in the distance, the constant heartbeat of war echoing across the valley. She didn't look back at the operations building. She didn't need to. She learned long ago that goodbyes had no place in her world. That night she sat alone in the dim glow of her quarters. The report sat open on the cot beside her, the lie she'd agreed to live with. She'd rewritten reality in the language of bureaucracy, neutralized threats, effective intelligence, coordinated response. Every line technically true, every line deliberately false. She picked up the pen again, hovered over the last sentence, then stopped. What was the point of writing truth when truth was the first casualty? Her radio crackled softly, a secure frequency, one voice familiar. Cipher 7, stand by for immediate redeployment. She sighed, staring at the ceiling. No rest, not for people like her. Copy, she said quietly, coordinates. A pause, then, encrypted, you'll receive them in transit. Understood. The line went dead. She sat there for a moment longer, letting the quiet sink in. Then she stood, began packing. Her movements were as precise as they'd been before, every mission deliberate, methodical, emotionless. Every fold of clothing, every piece of gear was muscle memory now. Her life packed neatly into compartments, ready to disappear on command. Outside, the base generator hummed. A dog barked somewhere near the motor pool. Men laughed around a burn barrel. For them, the war had edges. For Lucy King, it didn't. It was a loop, one mission blurring into the next, one choice erasing the last. When she finally stepped outside, the night air was cool and thin. The stars above the Afghan desert burned bright enough to make her feel small, and that was rare for her. A transport truck idled near the runway, tailgate down, waiting. A pilot stood beside it, clipboard in hand. Captain King. Yes. Orders say your wheel's up in 20. Destination classified. Understood. She handed him her duffel, then turned toward the horizon. Somewhere out there, past the darkness, another problem waited for her, another target, another mission that wouldn't exist on paper. She didn't resent it, not anymore. This was the deal she'd made: live unseen, fight unseen, die unseen if necessary. But something inside her had shifted since that valley, something Harrison hadn't accounted for. Because for the first time, Lucy King wasn't just following orders. She was starting to question them. As the truck rumbled toward the airfield, she leaned her head back against the metal paneling, eyes half closed. The rhythm of the engine became almost hypnotic, a lullaby of fatigue and purpose. She remembered Reeves' voice on the helicopter. My daughter wants to join the Marines. And her own reply, then help her, don't lie to her. Maybe that was the only truth she still believed in, that the next generation deserved a world where they didn't have to hide to be strong. The transport stopped. The pilot gestured toward the aircraft waiting at the far end of the runway, a small, unmarked plane, lights dimmed. Lucy climbed aboard without another word. As the engines roared to life, she looked through the small round window at the sleeping base below. Somewhere down there, Commander Hawthorne was probably writing his own report, finding a way to make sense of what he'd seen. Somewhere, Reeves was probably thinking of his daughter. And somewhere, Harrison was already preparing her next assignment, confident that she'd do her job because that's what she always did. But this time she wasn't so sure. Because somewhere between the first shot she fired in that valley and the last lie she'd written in that report, Lucy King had realized something. If the truth dies quietly enough times, eventually, so does the reason you ever fought for it. The plane lifted, slicing through the darkness, disappearing into the sky without a trace. The plane touched down just before dawn. No insignia, no flight plan, just another shadow landing in a country that officially didn't host American boots. Lucy King stepped out into mist and silence. The air was heavy, tropical humidity, not the dry breath of Afghanistan. A new landscape, a new ghost story. A jeep waited near the edge of the airstrip, headlights off, engine idling. The driver didn't speak, didn't even look at her. He just handed her a folder and drove into the dark once she took it. Inside the folder, a single photo, grainy and black and white. A man in his 40s, sharp suit, gold watch, smile that didn't reach his eyes. Name Farid Al-Hassan. Affiliation, government liaison. Classification, compromised asset. Directive, confirm, eliminate, vanish. Standard assignment, but something about the simplicity bothered her. Every mission came with context, logistics, intercepts, recon reports. This one had none, just a picture and a word, eliminate. She closed the folder, slipped it into her pack and looked around. Jungle mist coiled over the airfield. Beyond it, the faint lights of a coastal town glowed like scattered embers. She adjusted her rifle case and started walking. It took 3 hours to reach her safe house, a decaying apartment above an auto garage, its windows covered in blackout plastic. Inside, a cot, a radio, a single bare bulb, and the quiet hum of distant traffic. Lucy dropped her gear and sat on the edge of the cot, elbows on knees. She wasn't tired. She hadn't been tired in years, not in the normal way. Sleep was just the time her body waited for the next call. She opened the folder again, stared at the photo. Something was wrong. The man's file looked like it had been compiled by someone guessing. No pattern, no metadata, no operational notes. Just an image printed off a cheap inkjet. She'd seen bad intel before, but never this lazy. A faint knock came at the door. 2 taps, pause, 1 tap. The signal. Lucy unlatched the door. A man stepped inside, thin, sharp-featured, wearing civilian clothes. She recognized him instantly. Danvers, she said. King, he gave a small nod, eyes scanning the room. Still traveling light, I see. Still showing up uninvited, she replied. Orders from above. He closed the door quietly. This op's sensitive. You'll get local support, but only for extraction. No surveillance grid, no backup, in and out, quietly. Lucy studied him. Whose directive is this? Straight from Langley, he said too quickly. She caught it, the hesitation that didn't belong. Langley or Harrison? Danvers hesitated, then said, Does it matter? It does to me. He sighed. Look, I don't ask questions I don't want answers to. You shouldn't either. Lucy walked to the small table, placed the photo on it. You've seen this. Yeah, guy's dirty. Selling American assets to foreign intelligence. CIA wants him erased before he burns more operations. Where's the proof? Danvers shrugged. You think they'd brief me if they had any doubts? That's exactly when they brief people like us, she said. He gave her a look that said she was getting too close to the truth. You're overthinking it, King. It's a clean-up job, nothing new. But it was new. Something about the tone, the way he wouldn't meet her eyes, the way the details didn't line up. Danvers checked his watch. Your wheel's up in 6 hours. He'll be at a gala, hotel compound, high-profile guests. You get one window, maybe 5 minutes. Then you disappear. Simple. Nothing simple, she said quietly. He hesitated at the door. You used to be better at not caring. I used to believe what I was told. He didn't answer, just left. When the door closed, Lucy sat in silence for a long time. Her reflection in the window looked like a stranger. Same uniform beneath civilian clothes. Same scars. Same gray eyes that never stopped calculating. She remembered the valley, the smoke, the screams, the men who doubted her until they didn't. 17 dead enemies. 17 lives she could justify. This one felt different. That night she moved through the city like a shadow. No comms, no support, just instinct. The hotel was a marble fortress surrounded by guards and glass. She'd infiltrated worse. In the service elevator, she could hear the faint hum of laughter above her, music, clinking glasses, the sound of men who believed the world would always protect them. When she reached the service floor, She slipped through a maintenance corridor and found her vantage point, a narrow balcony overlooking the ballroom. There he was, Farid al-Hassan, standing beneath chandeliers, shaking hands with people in tailored suits, laughing, drinking, smiling that same smile that never touched his eyes. She unfolded the stock of her rifle, chambered a single round. Through the scope, the world shrank to breath and glass. Her finger tightened, and then she froze. Something was wrong. The way his eyes moved, the nervous smile, the way he kept glancing toward the corners of the room, not out of arrogance but fear. He wasn't hosting this event. He was being watched. Lucy adjusted her angle. That's when she saw them, two men in dark suits, too stiff, too alert. Not local security. Agency. She lowered her rifle slowly. Whatever this was, it wasn't an assassination. It was a setup. And she was the weapon. She exhaled, disassembled her rifle, and vanished into the maintenance shaft before anyone could spot her. By the time she reached street level, alarms were already echoing through the hotel. Her radio buzzed, Harrison's voice, cold, precise. Cipher 7 report. Lucy kept walking through the dark alleyways, slipping through rain and neon light. Target alive. Silence, then repeat. Target alive. No engagement, situation compromised. You were given a direct order. I was given a false file, she said. You sent me to kill a man being interrogated by your own operatives. You weren't cleaning up an asset, Harrison. You were cleaning up evidence. The silence on the other end was electric. Careful, Captain, he said finally. You're not cleared to question directives. I'm cleared to know when I'm being used, she snapped. Then consider this your reminder, he said, his voice dropping to something dangerous. You are a weapon, nothing more, and weapons don't get opinions. The line went dead. Lucy stood in the rain, pulse steady, mind whirling. Somewhere in the hotel, chaos unfolded. Someone would take the fall for the failed hit. Maybe the local liaison, maybe no one at all. But she knew what she'd seen, agency men watching their own asset. And Harrison's voice, careful not to deny it. For the first time, Lucy realized she wasn't cleaning the battlefield anymore. She was being asked to erase the witnesses. Back at the safe house, she pulled off her gear and sat on the cot, drenched, breathing slow. She replayed every mission in her mind, every elimination, every corrupted official, every compromised target. How many of them had truly been enemies? And how many had just been inconvenient? Outside, thunder rolled over the coast. She closed her eyes. She could run. She could vanish. She'd done it before. But part of her still believed in the purpose, in the oath she'd made when she first put on a uniform. Protect the innocent, serve the mission. Only now, the mission was starting to feel like the enemy. At dawn, she opened her encrypted tablet. The next assignment had already arrived. Different country, different name, same directive, confirm, eliminate. She stared at it for a long time, then shut the device. If the system was broken, she'd have to decide, fix it from the inside, or burn it from the outside. Either way, Lucy King wasn't done yet. She walked to the window. The city below was waking up, vendors opening stalls, children running barefoot through puddles, soldiers patrolling with rifles slung low. To them, the world was simple. Lines between good and evil were still clear. But Lucy knew better now. The lines blurred the closer you got to them. And sometimes, the people pulling the trigger weren't soldiers at all. They were bureaucrats with clean hands and dirty hearts. Her reflection in the glass stared back at her, calm, focused. But the eyes were different now. She wasn't just a weapon anymore. She was a question. And she intended to find her own answer. She hadn't slept in 48 hours. Sleep was a weakness you earned after trust, and trust was gone. Lucy King sat in the corner of a cargo hangar, back against a steel crate, the hum of generators filling the silence around her. The air smelled of kerosene and rust. She'd rerouted her own flight manifest, used a false tail number, vanished from official tracking. Somewhere, Harrison's people were already searching for her. She stared at the encrypted tablet on her lap. The new assignment file blinked on screen: coordinates, target name, elimination order. No reason, no justification, same format as before. But she'd learned to read ghosts in data. She opened the metadata. Lines of code that should have been clean were dirty, overwritten, tampered with. The file's source tag didn't match Langley's server. It originated from a relay node she didn't recognize. Civilian IP, private contractor. Private, not official. That's when she knew. The system wasn't compromised by an enemy. It was being fed from inside, someone laundering operations through a shell network, using her program as the trigger finger. And Harrison was covering it up. She powered down the tablet and looked around the hangar. A cargo plane was being refueled 50 meters away. The crew had no idea the quiet woman sitting in the corner was trying to decide whether to become a traitor or a whistleblower. A shadow moved in the doorway. Reeves. He looked out of place in civilian clothes, broad-shouldered, scar above his brow healing into a thin white line. "Had to pull favors to find you," he said, stepping closer. "You dropped off every grid the day you left Afghanistan. You shouldn't be here." "Yeah," he said, "that's what they told me." He crouched beside her, lowering his voice. "They said you went rogue, that you killed a civilian asset in Malaysia, that you're being recalled under investigation." Lucy's jaw tightened. "I didn't kill anyone, they set me up." "I figured." "How?" "Because I saw what you did for us," he said. "And because I know what it looks like when command tries to bury something they can't explain." She studied him for a moment. "You risked your career coming here." He gave a small, crooked smile. "I've already got one foot out. My daughter enlisted. Marines. Figured I should set a better example than running scared." Lucy almost smiled back. "Almost. She'll do fine." "I hope so, because she believes in the system. Still thinks the good guys always wear the flag." Lucy looked away. "Then don't tell her what you've seen." He followed her gaze to the tablet. "What are you planning?" "Finding out who's feeding bad intel into the network. Someone's using government clearance to run off-book hits. I've been their executioner." Reeves exhaled slowly. "And if it's Harrison?" She didn't answer. The silence said enough. He reached into his jacket, pulled out a small drive. "Got you something. Intel from a friend in Signals Division. Traces of rerouted ops data, same signature as your assignment files. Leads back to DC shell front called Althera Global." Lucy took the drive, fingers brushing his briefly. "Private defense contractor." "Officially, yeah. Unofficially, they funnel logistics to black operations, mercenaries, deniable missions, the kind that don't need congressional approval. Which means someone inside the agency selling them access." Reeves nodded. "And someone's protecting them." She pocketed the drive. "I'll handle it." "Lucy," he hesitated. "If you go after them, they'll burn you. You know that, right?" "They already did." He looked at her for a long moment, then stood. "For what it's worth, I'm on your side." "Then stay alive," she said. "That'll be enough." He gave a faint nod, turned, and disappeared into the light bleeding through the hangar doors. Lucy waited until the sound of his footsteps faded before connecting the drive. Data scrolled across the screen: mission IDs, timestamps, signatures. The same ghost pattern repeated across 12 operations, all signed under one clearance code: H-17. Harrison. But not alone. Every file was also tagged with another string of letters: A9. She typed the code into her secure relay. "Access denied, classified above her level." She smiled without humor. "Above my level," she whispered. "Right." She closed the tablet and stood. The decision was already made. She'd go home. Not to her apartment in Virginia that was gone, wiped the moment she broke protocol. She'd go deeper where the secrets lived. Washington, D.C. 3 days later, the city shimmered under summer rain. Glass towers and marble monuments reflected the storm clouds above, power dressed as permanence. Lucy walked through the crowd near Union Station wearing a business suit and carrying a messenger bag. Her ID badge marked her as consultant, a word that meant nothing and everything in that town. Inside, she met her contact, a tech officer she'd known from earlier JSOC rotations, a quiet man named Lewis. He looked nervous the moment he saw her. "You shouldn't have come here. They flagged your biometrics at every checkpoint." "They can't flag what they can't see," she said. "You've got about 20 minutes before someone upstairs notices this terminal's live." He slid her a tablet across the table. "Everything I could pull on Althera Global. You were right, they're laundering black budget contracts through counterintelligence divisions. Payments route through diplomatic channels to offshore accounts." "Who signs them?" He hesitated. "Multiple authorizations, but one name repeats: Thomas R. Harrison." Lucy's jaw tightened. "And A9. Lewis swallowed. "You're not going to like it." "Try me." "It's a clearance group. Internal oversight. Think of it as God mode. They can greenlight anything and erase it after. No trace, and Harrison's on it." "Who else?" Lewis shook his head. "That file's restricted. I can't open it without tripping alarms." "Then don't open it." She reached into her bag and placed a small encrypted drive on the table. "Copy everything. Secure it offline." "Lucy." "Do it. If I don't come back, leak it to the press. Use the dead man timer we built in Bagram." He stared at her, realizing what she was asking. "If you go at them alone, you'll vanish. They'll erase you like a typo." "I'm already a ghost," she said. He copied the files in silence, hands trembling. When he handed the drive back, he whispered, "Be careful." Lucy pocketed it and left without another word. She didn't go to a hotel. She went underground, literally, to a storage unit she'd kept for years, filled with the remnants of every life she'd lived under false names. Weapons, passports, cash, memories. She sat on the cold concrete floor, plugged the drive into her private terminal, and watched the truth unravel. Althera wasn't just running off book hits. They were creating chaos, destabilizing regions, manufacturing crises, then selling the cleanup contracts back to the same governments they'd just broken. And Harrison's network was orchestrating it all under the guise of counterterrorism. Every bullet Lucy had fired had made someone rich. She closed her eyes. Her hands shook for the first time in years. For soldiers, guilt was simple: kill or don't. But this was different. This was betrayal disguised as duty. The screen blinked. Incoming message, unknown source. A single line of text. "Stop digging or you'll join your targets. H." She stared at it, then deleted it. Fear wasn't part of her anymore, but anger was. She opened her field log and recorded her own entry. Her voice was calm, measured, but the words burned. Operation Cipher, classified addendum, internal corruption confirmed within chain of command, multiple compromised clearances connected to contractor Althera Global, recommend full audit under independent oversight, evidence secured. If this log is recovered posthumously, released to Congressional Intelligence Committee. Captain Lucy King. She saved the file, encrypted it 3 ways, and uploaded it to a dead drop network. Then she packed light: one sidearm, one rifle, one objective: find Harrison before he found her. It was raining when she reached the outskirts of Langley. The air smelled like wet asphalt and power. Through the fence line, the complex glowed in sterile light, every window a secret she once believed in. She stood across the road, hidden in shadows. Somewhere inside, the man who'd built her career and destroyed it was probably sipping coffee, writing his next directive. She exhaled slowly. The weight of everything settled in her chest: the valley, the ambush, the lies, the men she'd saved, the ones she'd killed. This wasn't revenge, it was accountability. But as she raised the binoculars, movement caught her eye: two black SUVs rolling out from the gate. She saw the plate number: Harrison's convoy. Timing, she thought. Maybe fate still believed in her. She followed on foot, blending into the late-night traffic. The vehicles turned onto a bridge leading toward the Potomac. Rain drummed on the hood of passing cars, lights reflecting like fire on water. Lucy kept her distance, mind calm, heartbeat steady. This wasn't a mission she'd been ordered to do. This was one she chose. For the first time, the voiceover in her head wasn't command. It was conscience. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts. The night was a river of headlights. Rain fell sideways across the bridge, streaking through the glow of street lamps like tracer fire, slowed to a whisper. Lucy moved with the rhythm of the storm, coat hood pulled low, eyes locked on the pair of black SUVs gliding ahead through traffic. Harrison's convoy. Two vehicles, 4 men each, windows tinted to mirror the city's light back into itself. She kept to the shadows along the service walk, footsteps lost beneath the roar of the Potomac. Each pace was measured, close enough to track, far enough to disappear. In her ear, a small transceiver whispered static. She tapped into the local law enforcement band, the way she always did before things went loud. Not to call for help, just to know how long she had before anyone else noticed. The convoy slowed near the midpoint of the bridge. Floodlights from a maintenance barge lit the underspan below. For a second, Lucy thought they might be meeting someone. Then she saw it. A third vehicle waiting on the shoulder, engine running, hazard lights blinking red through the rain. A handoff. She crossed the pedestrian barrier, dropped down behind a concrete pillar and watched. Harrison stepped out of the first SUV, coat collar high, briefcase in hand. He looked smaller without his office walls, older, thinner, almost human. Another man emerged from the waiting car, tall, clean-cut, wearing a civilian raincoat over military posture. Lucy adjusted her scope. The new man's face came into focus, and her pulse slowed. Deputy Director Alan Creighton, CIA Oversight Committee. The same A9 signature burned into her assignment files. Her throat tightened. Harrison hadn't been the puppet master, he was the puppet. The wind carried fragments of their conversation across the bridge. "You assured me the Malaysian operation was contained." "It is," she went off script, but the story's holding. "And the SEAL incident?" "Officially a success, unofficially erased." Creighton's voice was calm, almost bored. "Good, keep it that way. And Harrison?" "Yes, sir." "Find her, before she remembers who she really works for." Lightning flashed, and for an instant both men turned toward the river, the same direction Lucy crouched in the shadows. She froze. The thunder swallowed her heartbeat. Then they moved again. Creighton handed Harrison a sealed envelope, stepped into his car and drove away, leaving the two SUVs idling in the rain. Lucy stayed still until their tail lights vanished into the fog. Then she stood, cold water dripping from her hair, and whispered to the storm, "You found me first." By the time she reached the end of the bridge, she'd already decided what came next. She followed Harrison's convoy at a distance through the sleeping suburbs until it turned down a private road and disappeared behind the gates of an estate that screamed government hush money. Stone walls, security cameras disguised as lanterns, a flag that never saw daylight. She waited an hour, mapping the perimeter, counting guards. Then she slipped through the drainage culvert beneath the east fence, moving low, patient, silent. The mansion's back windows glowed faintly. Inside, silhouettes passed through the light, one tall, one shorter, two armed. She timed their routes, exhaled, and went in through a service door whose alarm had been conveniently disconnected. The hallway smelled of coffee and gun oil. At the end of it, voices. "She's become a liability, Tom. You trained her to think too much." "I trained her to survive," Harrison said. "That's what you wanted." "I wanted an asset, not a conscience with a rifle." Creighton again, he was still here. Lucy stepped closer, keeping behind the half-open door. Creighton continued, "We'll frame her next op. Civilian casualties, rogue action, whatever sells. Then we'll release the footage. Congress will bury her and every inquiry dies with her name on it." Harrison's reply was barely a whisper. "You're talking about killing her." "No," Creighton said. "I'm talking about erasing her. Same result, cleaner headline." Lucy's hand tightened on the pistol at her thigh. Harrison's silhouette moved toward the window, shoulders slumped. "You built a machine that eats its own people, Alan." "You built it with me," Creighton said. "Don't start finding religion now." A pause, the soft click of a briefcase closing. Then Creighton turned toward the door, the one Lucy was behind. For a moment, it felt like he could see her through the wood. "Handle it," he said to Harrison, "or I will." Footsteps. A door opened somewhere deeper in the house, then closed. Harrison stayed still for a long time. Then quietly, "You can come in now, Lucy." She froze. He didn't turn around. "You were never as invisible as you thought." Slowly, she stepped through the doorway, pistol raised. He faced the window, hands visible, rain-streaked glass reflecting her silhouette beside him. "I told them you show up. I just didn't tell them when." "Then why are you still breathing?" she asked. "Because part of you came here for answers, not blood." "Answers won't bring back the people you used me to kill." He nodded. "No, but they might stop the next ones." She hesitated. The rage she'd carried for weeks faltered against the exhaustion in his voice. Harrison turned slowly. There was no weapon in his hand, only the envelope Creighton had given him. He laid it on the table between them. Inside were photos, dozens of them, politicians, contractors, officers. Each marked with the same red stamp, A9 authorized. "They built the program before I ever met you," he said. "I thought I could steer it, keep it clean. But power doesn't stay clean, it feeds." "You could have stopped it." "I tried. They threatened to shut it down by force, erase every operator, every record. You were their first name on the list." Her stomach turned. "So you sent me to Malaysia to die quietly." "I sent you there to survive loudly." His eyes met hers. "You did exactly what I hoped," questioned it, "walked off script. That's the only way to make them expose themselves." She studied him for a long time. "You're lying." He shook his head. "Check the coordinates in that file. There's a server hub beneath an old relay station outside Arlington. That's where A9 keeps its backups, names, transactions, every ghost operation since 2008. Burn that and you cut out the heart." "And you?" "I'm already dead," he said. "Creighton signed the warrant an hour ago." As if on cue, headlights flashed outside, the low growl of engines approaching fast. "Go," he said. "They're not here for me." "Come with me." He smiled faintly. "You'll need someone inside to stall them. Buy you 5 minutes." "You won't last 5 minutes." "Five's all I've ever been good for." He turned back to the window. "Make them remember why they feared you." Her throat burned. "You trained me to be invisible." "I trained you to survive," he said. "Now prove I was right." She hesitated one heartbeat longer, then moved. Down the hall, through the kitchen, out into the rain. Behind her, the front door splintered. Shouts, gunfire, one short burst, then silence. She didn't look back. By the time the sun broke the horizon, she was miles away. The storm had passed, leaving the streets shining like new metal. She found the relay station exactly where Harrison said it would be, half-collapsed brick tower, fenced off, government signage long faded. Inside, the air smelled of dust and ozone. Cables snaked through the walls like veins. She followed them down a narrow staircase into the dark. The bunker beneath the station was a cathedral of machines, racks of servers humming under cold light. On a central console, a single monitor glowed. She inserted Harrison's key drive. The system came alive. Rows of classified files opened like confessionals. A9 wasn't a clearance group. It was a network, an algorithmic command structure feeding on chaos, contracting private wars through layers of bureaucracy so deep no human could track accountability. The signatures weren't just Harrison's or Creighton's. They included senators, executives, generals. It wasn't corruption, it was design. Lucy stared at the screen. All the years, all the missions, all the quiet nights convincing herself the ends justified the means. Every shot she fired had been another coin in their machine. Her hand hovered over the keyboard. She could upload everything to Lewis's dead drop, expose it to the world. But the upload time read 7 minutes. Outside the low thrum of engines, multiple vehicles, she had maybe 4. She started the upload anyway. Footsteps echoed in the stairwell. Lucy crouched behind a server stack, sidearm drawn. Shadows moved across the floor, 3, maybe 4, suppressed rifles. Cipher 7, a voice called. Creighton, step out, you can't win this. She didn't answer. We can spin the story, he said. Say you uncovered a breach, say you stopped rogue elements. You'll live. She waited, listening to their positions shift. 1 on the right, 2 flanking, professional, predictable. She moved first. A flash, 2 shots. 2 men down before their rifles cleared the door. She rolled, fired again, clipping the 3rd's shoulder. The 4th returned fire, rounds cracking off metal, sparks showering the dark. The upload timer blinked, 4:12. Creighton ducked behind a console. You really think you're saving anyone? The next system will replace this one before sunrise. Then I'll keep breaking it until they run out of names. He leaned out, pistol raised. You're not a hero, Lucy. You're a malfunction. She shot him through the hand before he could finish. He screamed, dropped the gun, fell back against the rack. Blood darkened his sleeve. The timer blinked down to 0:23. Lucy stood over him. Rainwater dripped from her jacket, pooling on the floor. He stared up at her, hatred and pain twisting his face. You can't kill an idea. No, she said quietly, but you can remind it to be afraid. She fired once. Then she turned to the terminal. The upload completed, screen flashing green. Transmission sent. She pulled the drive, wiped the system, and walked out into the morning. Behind her, the servers burned. The sun climbed over the Potomac, washing the city in light that felt too clean for what it covered. Sirens wailed in the distance, but Lucy kept walking. No destination, no orders, just breath. For the first time in years, there was nothing in her ear telling her what to do. Freedom, she realized, wasn't loud. It was quiet. It was the sound of her own footsteps on empty streets, unchained from command. She thought of Harrison, of Reeves, of the Valley. Sometimes you fight for a flag. Sometimes you fight for the people who believe in it. And sometimes you fight to make it honest again. She walked until the city disappeared behind her, until the world felt wide enough to start over. And somewhere far above, in the data clouds of 1,000 servers, her upload kept spreading, copies of truth multiplying faster than anyone could erase them. Lucy King vanished that day. But the idea of her didn't. Morning broke over a city that had forgotten how to breathe. Across Washington, phones vibrated, inboxes filled, encrypted servers flickered under the weight of something that wasn't supposed to exist. The files were everywhere: newsrooms, whistleblower forums, embassy terminals. Project A9. Deniable assassinations, fabricated threats, black budgets disguised as aid. Every name, every authorization, every lie. And at the center of it all, an operator whose record no longer existed. Lucy King. Commander Jack Hawthorne woke to the sound of pounding on his door. Two men in dark suits, government badges. "Sir, you're required for questioning." He didn't ask why, he already knew. In a windowless conference room downtown, they showed him a photo, Lucy's face. "Did you know she was operating off book?" "I knew she was saving my men." "That's not an answer. It's the only one I've got." They pushed a folder toward him, pages of redacted briefings, satellite shots, timestamps. He stared at the blur of black lines. "Tell me," he said quietly, "after all that censoring, do you even remember what you're hiding?" The younger agent looked away. The older one closed the folder. "You're dismissed, Commander." He stood. "She told me once, the most dangerous people are the ones you never see coming. You just proved her right." In North Carolina, Marcus Reeves sat on his porch watching the rain fall through the trees. A reporter's van was parked at the end of his drive. They'd been there since dawn. His daughter, uniform crisp, came out holding her phone. "Dad, is it true? The woman who saved your team, she's the one in the leak." Reeves didn't answer right away. He watched the rain slide off the railing, remembered the smell of dust and gunfire in that Afghan valley. "She's not the villain they're saying," he said finally. "Then what is she?" He thought for a long moment. A soldier who remembered what the job was supposed to mean. His daughter sat beside him, eyes bright with questions she was too young to ask. "Do you think she's still alive?" He looked toward the horizon. People like her don't die easy. In an office 9 floors above Pennsylvania Avenue, Alan Creighton's hand was wrapped in fresh bandages. The wound from Lucy's bullet had already been rewritten into a story about an accident during security testing. Televisions lined the wall, each showing the same headline in different fonts. "Global outcry over secret U.S. program." He muted the screens. "Damage assessment," he said. An aide handed him a tablet. "Dozens of resignations pending, multiple investigations. Senate hearings next week. Sir, they're calling for an independent tribunal." Creighton scrolled through the data, expression unreadable. "And the source?" "No confirmation, but the pattern." "It was her," he finished. "Of course it was." He set the tablet down. Outside, thunderheads gathered over the Potomac again, dark and slow. "Find her," he said, "before they make her a symbol." Lucy watched it all unfold from a small cafe 2 countries away. She sat near the window, hood drawn, newspaper open to a story about herself. They didn't know her name, only her code name, Cipher 7. The article called her a phantom whistleblower with military precision. Some called her a hero, others a traitor. She felt neither. The television above the counter showed footage of protests, veterans marching beside journalists, flags upside down, crowds shouting for accountability. A young woman on the screen held a sign that read, "Truth has no clearance." Lucy's coffee had gone cold, untouched. She folded the paper, left cash on the table, and stepped outside into the crowded street. Nobody recognized her. That anonymity, once a burden, now felt like the only freedom she had left. She walked toward the docks where fishing boats swayed against the gray water. For a moment she imagined just leaving, disappearing into the noise of ordinary life. But peace for people like her was a mirage. You could see it, never touch it. A phone vibrated in her pocket, unknown number. She answered anyway. "Lucy," a voice whispered. She froze. "Reeves." "Yeah, I don't have long. They've been questioning everyone, but I thought you should know the files hit harder than you think. Congress opened hearings. Harrison's testimony was released posthumously. He named names." She closed her eyes. "He bought me 5 minutes." "He bought the truth more time than that." A pause. They'll come for you. They already did, she said. You could still come back, tell your side. They wouldn't hear it. I would. That quiet between them, half static, half memory, said what words couldn't. Take care of your daughter, Lucy said. Make sure she learns to be better than us. Lucy. But the line had already gone dead. 2 weeks later, Washington looked like a wounded animal pretending not to limp. Senate hearings played live on every channel. Creighton sat before the cameras, calm, polished, lying with the ease of a man who'd practiced all his life. Project A9 was an experimental intelligence algorithm, he said smoothly. Certain rogue operators misused it for unauthorized actions. We are investigating. The committee chair leaned forward, and the whistleblower. No confirmation of identity, possibly foreign interference. Behind the glass of the hearing room, civilians watched in silence. Reeves stood among them in uniform, jaw tight, eyes fixed on Creighton. He thought of Lucy's last words, "Stop underestimating people." He didn't plan it. The decision just rose from somewhere deep and tired. He stepped forward, voice steady. That's a lie. Every head turned. Commander Reeves, the chair said sharply, you are out of order. No, sir, you're out of truth. He told them everything. The valley, the ambush, the woman who saved them, the orders she disobeyed to keep them alive. By the time security escorted him out, the cameras were still rolling. And somewhere across the ocean, Lucy saw it on a grainy live stream, watched him risk everything for honesty. For the first time in years, she felt something close to hope. Night again, a freight yard on the edge of Lisbon, containers stacked like tombstones. Lucy waited between them, wind carrying the salt of the Atlantic. A figure approached, Lewis, the tech from D.C., face pale under the halogen lamps. You shouldn't have come, she said. You shouldn't have sent that much truth at once, he replied. They're panicking, half of Langley on internal lockdown, but you should see it, the hearings, the resignations. You lit the fuse. She looked past him toward the ocean, and what happens when it burns out? Maybe something new grows from the ashes. She gave a small, tired smile. You always were the optimist. He handed her a small sat phone. Encrypted line, you'll need it. If they track me after this, I'm gone. She took the phone, eyes soft. Lewis, thank you. He hesitated, then said, the world thinks you're a ghost. Maybe stay that way. She watched him leave, then turned back to the sea. Waves slammed against the pier, each one erasing the last. She flipped open the phone. No signal here, that was the point. Somewhere beyond the horizon, the truth was moving. Data, witnesses, voices. She'd done what she could. Now she had to decide who she wanted to be without the mission. She thought of her first day on the C-130, the smirks, the bets that she'd freeze under fire. She thought of Harrison, telling her to survive. Of Reeves, telling his daughter not to lie to herself. Maybe the story wasn't about winning. Maybe it was about refusing to stay silent. The wind picked up, whipping hair across her face. The sky opened, rain again, relentless cleansing. She whispered into it, you wanted me erased. But you can't delete a conscience. She walked toward the water until the waves reached her boots. The city lights shimmered behind her like another world she'd outgrown. She didn't know where she'd go next. Maybe somewhere nobody spoke her language. Maybe nowhere at all. But for the first time, she wasn't running from orders. She was walking toward choice. News anchors would later call it the quiet revolution of one. Historians would debate whether she was real or a composite myth built from leaked data and rumor. Governments would deny, then rebuild, then repeat. And somewhere out there, a woman with gray eyes and steady hands would keep moving, changing names, teaching others to see the cracks in the armor of certainty. She would never give another interview. She would never stand trial. She would never need to. Because the truth she'd unleashed no longer belonged to her. It belonged to everyone who'd ever been told to follow blindly, to trust orders, to silence doubt. At dawn, a fisherman on the Portuguese coast saw a lone figure walking along the surf, rifle case slung over one shoulder. He waved, she didn't wave back. He thought she looked peaceful. When he blinked, she was gone, vanished into the fog like she'd never been there. But miles away, on every screen still glowing with the fallout of her actions, a single line of her final field log kept appearing, copied, reposted, rewritten in 100 languages. Sometimes the mission isn't to win. It's to remind the world what losing its soul looks like. 6 months. That's how long it took for the noise to fade. The hearings ended. The networks moved on. The world found new headlines to shout about, new villains to fear, new heroes to forget. But every once in a while, in a classroom, in a barracks, in a quiet office at 2 a.m., someone would whisper her name. Cipher 7. The woman who turned her rifle on the system that built her. Some said she died in a shootout in Spain. Others swore she joined a private rescue group in Eastern Europe. A few believed she was buried under a false name somewhere in Virginia, just another ghost under Arlington's manicured grass. But those who knew better never believed she was gone. Because people like her don't die. They dissolve into the stories we tell ourselves when the truth gets too heavy to carry. A small town in northern Montana. Snow falling in soft, uneven sheets over the mountains. A pickup truck pulled into a gas station at the edge of nowhere. The driver, a man in his 40s, worn jacket, military posture he couldn't unlearn, Marcus Reeves. He filled the tank, rubbed his hands together against the cold, and looked toward the diner across the road. The bell above the door chimed as he entered. Inside, the air was warm and filled with the smell of coffee and old wood. The waitress smiled. "You look like you've been driving a long way." "Long enough," he said. He took a booth near the window. Snow pressed against the glass like quiet static. He pulled out his phone, signal weak, and scrolled through a headline that had stopped trending weeks ago. WHISTLEBLOWER trigger international reform. New transparency ACT-PASSED. He smiled faintly. The world for once had learned something. Then he froze. A woman stepped inside the diner, hood up, gloves still wet from snow. She walked to the counter, ordered coffee, and sat alone, back to the wall, eyes scanning the room the way only soldiers did. He knew that posture. He knew that stillness. For a moment, his heart forgot how to beat. He rose, walked slowly to her table. "You're supposed to be dead," he said quietly. Lucy King looked up, and the faintest smile touched her lips. "Supposed to be," she said. Reeves sat down opposite her. For a long while neither spoke. The jukebox hummed softly in the corner, an old country song about miles and mistakes. Finally he said, "You saw what you did, right? You saw what it changed." She nodded. "Change isn't clean, it never is. They'll rebuild what they lost, they always do." "Maybe, but now they know someone's watching." She looked out the window, snow swirling, endless, white as static. The point wasn't to destroy them, Reeves. It was to remind them someone still bleeds for what's right. He studied her, the new scars near her temple, the calm behind her eyes. "You're not coming back, are you?" She smiled faintly. "Back to what?" He chuckled under his breath. "You know, my daughter still talks about you, says she joined the Corps because of that story. The woman sniper who didn't miss." Lucy's gaze softened. "Tell her not to be me." "I tried, she didn't listen." "Good," Lucy said quietly. "Then maybe she'll fix what we couldn't." They sat in silence for a moment, two soldiers who had run out of wars but not out of ghosts. Then Reeves asked, "So what now?" She sipped her coffee. Now I keep walking." He smiled, "Still can't stay put." "I tried once," she said, "didn't take." He reached across the table, set his dog tags beside her cup. "For luck." She looked at them, the dull metal, the scratches, and shook her head. "You need those more than I do." He leaned back, eyes glinting. "You sure?" Lucy reached into her jacket and pulled something from her pocket, a small flash drive, taped and worn. She slid it across to him. "What's this?" "The rest of it," she said. "Names they never found, projects still buried. You'll know what to do." He stared at it, unsure whether to be grateful or terrified. "You trust me that much?" "I trust you enough to finish what Truth started." He nodded slowly. "Where will you go?" Lucy smiled, the kind that carried both peace and exhaustion. "Somewhere they don't know my name." Reeves exhaled, eyes glistening. "You ever get tired of fighting?" "Every day," she said softly. "But some things are worth the wait." Outside, a snowplow rumbled past, throwing sparks off the ice. When Reeves looked back, Lucy was already standing. He wanted to say something, anything, but words felt small compared to what she'd done, what she'd survived. She pulled her hood back up, left a few bills on the table, and said only, "Take care of your daughter." Then she was gone, out into the snow, footsteps vanishing almost instantly. Reeves sat for a long time after, staring at the flash drive in his hand. Then he whispered the only thing that felt right. "Semper Fi, Lucy." 2 months later. A village somewhere in the Carpathians. High peaks, silent skis, a monastery rebuilt from ruins. A woman helped a local child tie a bandage around a cut hand. Her hair was shorter now, her accent faintly foreign. The villagers called her the teacher. No one asked about her past, she didn't offer it. At night, she'd walk the ridgeline above the valley, looking down at the world she'd once bled for. Sometimes she'd listen to the old shortwave frequencies, static whispering in her ear like ghosts trying to remember their names. One night she heard something through the noise, a voice she almost recognized. "To all field units, honor remains. Repeat, honor remains." She smiled. "Reeves," she whispered. Then she turned off the radio and watched the stars spill across the mountains. The world below was still fractured, still loud, still human. But for the first time in a long time, she believed maybe, just maybe, people could learn. Maybe the truth didn't need a rifle anymore. Years would pass. Governments would change. Files would be rewritten. But the echo of what she did, of who she was, would remain. In classrooms, instructors would talk about her as a myth. In barracks, new recruits would tell stories about a sniper who vanished rather than lie. In newsrooms, her name would be whispered whenever power grew too confident. And in quiet moments, somewhere deep in the conscience of the world, her voice would linger steady, unflinching, reminding those who listen that silence, too, can be defiance. One last entry. Her handwriting faded, ink pressed deep into the paper of an unmarked journal. "I was trained to pull the trigger. But the hardest lesson was learning when not to. They taught me loyalty. The world taught me consequence. And somewhere between the two, I found who I was. Sometimes the bravest act isn't fighting for orders. It's walking away from them. Because in the end, dignity doesn't shout. It doesn't demand to be seen. It simply acts and lets the world decide what it meant."